Hello, I'm Glenn and welcome to episode 3 of Ielts Talk Tips. And episode 3 is about something you may have heard before, linking words. If you've heard of this idea before, well, you could almost skip this entire episode. But if you've never heard of linking words before, this is a very important episode for you to watch, as will all the following episodes in this series of Ielts Talk Tips. So let's look at linking words. I'll put them up on the screen here for you right now. They are basically the things that we say to join ideas and sometimes to join sentences. They make your English sound more natural, or as people say, more fluent. Linking words broadly fall into a few different categories or areas. You can see them on the screen right now. We use linking words to add emphasis, to talk about additional items or additional things that we are joining together. We use linking words to contrast ideas, even to contrast some nouns. And we use linking words to order things, to put things in a logical or correct or meaningful order. Let's look at the first area or category, as I said before, emphasis. And these are some of the most common emphasis linking words. You can see there, undoubtedly, undoubtedly. Maybe I can give you an example of how to use this word. Maybe talk about politics. So nobody really wants to hear about politics, but sometimes it's the first thing which pops into one's head because politics is always at the forefront of the media news. Undoubtedly, many people voted for Donald Trump during his presidential campaign. But it wasn't the same story with other US elections. So it's without doubt, undoubtedly. Indeed, it's very, very similar, and in fact we could even swap those two words in the Donald Trump scenario. Indeed, many people voted for Donald Trump during the last election. Obviously, it's kind of, well, it's an obvious word, but taking our little political example into account, it would be a bit strange to say, obviously many people voted for Donald Trump. Particularly, now we're getting into a new area here, or we can also say, in particular, I could say, I like chocolate. In particular, I like white chocolate. Or people are particularly fussy about who takes care of their children, as most people should be. Especially, I think you know this word, clearly, importantly, absolutely, definitely, without doubt, never, and it should be noted. So if you want to, you can rewind and practice the pronunciation of some of those words, because many of them are kind of multi-syllable words that not everybody can always pronounce clearly. Words like definitely, definitely. And many accents around the world, North China accent, Russian accent, many people don't know how to stretch the final ly sound. So definitely will sound like definitely, definitely. It should be definitely. Be careful of sounds like that. And of course, we also have words like especially. So be careful of that. These multi-syllable words, especially multi-syllable words that end with the final long E sound. Final long E sound can be heard in words like especially, definitely, but also in words like party, committee, pretty. So it's always a good idea that when you are watching my programs, to try to repeat after me, and I will try to remember to pause for you to repeat after me, particularly on these longer multi-syllable words. It helps to improve your pronunciation. Now let's go on to linking words that are about addition. Additionally, or an additional. In that second example there, we could say an additional point would be blah, 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 blah. An additional point would be blah, blah, blah. Some people say yeah, or raka, 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 but most people say blah, blah, blah. An additional point would be la, 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 blah, 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 raka, raka, raka. It's the beginning of a sentence, of course. Furthermore, Now, this is frequently shortened, especially in English of the last 30 years, to just further. Many learners don't use this, but it is perfectly suitable to just shorten furthermore to further. Furthermore is like, nowadays, it's like the formal version of further. I think I said that right. Furthermore nowadays is the formal version of further. To, and also, yes, we're talking about the TOO. So I like him too, or I like strawberry too. And also, we know this one. As well as, and sometimes people will add the that. As well as that, la 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 la. As well as. Along with. Perhaps some people don't know this type of linking word. We would use it maybe in a sentence like, along with Chinese, Japanese are the main increase of Australian tourism this year. Along with Chinese, Japanese, or maybe vice versa, along with Japanese, Chinese are represent the main increase in tourism this year. So it's kind of like in addition to. But sometimes it sounds more appropriate to say along with. And that can be a tough thing for English learners to get a grasp on. When is it appropriate? When does something sound better than other forms of expression? The only suggestion I would have for you is that when you do see something which is slightly less common, and in this instance, less common than in addition, in other words, along with is less common than in addition, try to note the context or the situation it is being used in. That's very normal. We're learning by context, and we also learn linking words by context as well. So as I said, we could use along with in many contexts or situations, but the example that I gave you, or the situation that I gave you about tourism, was pretty good. Along with an increase in Chinese tourism, we also saw an increase in the amount of Japanese tourists. So it means together with. But a slightly different feeling to in addition. Now, besides, yes, I think many of you know that, moreover. Now, I really want to bring your attention to moreover. I was teaching in China for 7 years, and before mainland China, I was teaching in Taiwan. Well, you know, it's debatable, Taiwan, China, for 6.5 years. So I've spent about 14 years in Chinese-speaking countries. And it's very common in China for the English learning textbooks to always use moreover. They think it sounds, well, good or formal or whatever. But really, in spoken English, moreover is not a popular word. I'll say that again. In spoken English, moreover is not a popular word. And nowadays, even in academic English, moreover is not so common or popular. We really prefer to say furthermore, further, or in addition to. However, in very formal academic work, maybe say PhD academic paperwork, and also in legal documents, you will still find moreover. I'll turn that upside down just to make sure that you got the point. You can still find moreover in legal documents and very formal academic documents, maybe like PhD papers when somebody is becoming a doctor, that type of high level academic work. But for most people nowadays in English speaking countries, bachelor's degree, master's degree, you will see furthermore or in addition to. So be careful. It is strange. I can always tell it's an Asian student if I'm reading their essay work and I see moreover, it starts to get a bit repetitive, especially when it's not so common. Now, more linking words in this area. In addition to this and apart from this. In addition to this and apart from this. Let's go to linking words about contrast now. Unlike blah 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 or raka raka raka, la 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 la. So unlike my sister, I like bananas. Or maybe because I really don't like bananas, my sister could say, unlike my brother, I like bananas. I've never been able to eat bananas. I have this terrible habit of buying only 3 bananas at the supermarket, and then usually they all go in the rubbish 3 days later. What seems like a good idea at the time, I put in the rubbish bin. Anyway, that's my banana problem. Contrasting words again. Yes, unlike, nevertheless. Nevertheless. It's nevertheless, put together all as one word. On the other hand, be careful about this. It's so common, it can become a cliche in both spoken English and also in written English. I would say stay away from it. Even in your formal associations like job interviews or something like this, stay away from on the other hand, because it's just too cliche nowadays, meaning that it's just worn out. And I even perhaps, I'm not sure about this, but perhaps I don't hear it so much anymore. I think many people who are native speakers are wary of this problem, and they don't use on the other hand so much anymore. But English language learners tend to think that it is very common. They use it, and often they use it too much. So be wary of the expression and the contrast. On the other hand, there are many, many better alternatives. Nonetheless, yes. Now, this is different to nevertheless. Very similar, but there are occasions when you will use nonetheless and occasions where you will use nevertheless. As I said before, it's a matter of trying to take note of the context when you're learning this vocabulary, or any vocabulary, not just linking words. Despite or in spite of, I think many of you know this, so I won't go into it too deeply. In contrast, sometimes we can say by contrast, or in contrast to, I think you know it. While, comma, blah, 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 blah. I think many of you can work this out. While this is happening, this is also the alternative. Whereas, again, quite similar to while. Alternatively, conversely, even so, and differing from. Differing from is not common, but still it's worth mentioning here. And now the fourth area of linking words is all about order, all about a sequence of actions. And it gets pretty easy. Firstly, secondly, thirdly. Some students ask me, should they be using first or should they be using firstly? Now, it's a kind of a cultural and confusing area. I have heard some different opinions on this. My opinion, which I believe is pretty good, and I'm willing to put myself out there in public about it, is that if we were talking about language from maybe 25 years ago, 30 years ago, language prior to maybe 1990, or even language prior to 1985, we would hear more people saying, firstly, la 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 la, secondly, la 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 la, and that would especially be about oral English. But nowadays, in both oral English and written English, people usually just write first, second, third, and so on. Also, there is another idea, as I said, it's one of these cultural ideas, is that it's not only about that the language has changed over the years, but also if you are going to even nowadays differ between first and firstly, or second and secondly in oral English, it can add some more emphasis to your points or the strength of your feelings. If I'm really trying to get my point across, and I'm perhaps maybe trying to be serious, perhaps I'm a little bit upset, I would say, firstly, you forgot to take out the rubbish. Secondly, you burnt the meal last night. Thirdly, you spend all time on your smartphone. It's some domestic thing or some personal thing that's happening. Then I'd probably use the ly form. Firstly, secondly, thirdly. But just softer English for most other situations, first, second. So that's how I would differ. I think it's pretty good advice. But generally speaking, it won't be a disaster for you if you decide to use the ly form. Firstly, secondly, thirdly. But my advice, modern English, whether it's written English or oral English, you can drop the ly form. First, second, third. Finally, well, there's always finally. It's always going to have ly on the end. At this time, nice English. Yep, at present, at this time, nice English. Sounds good. Following is this thing that will happen, or following is the what took place, or following is my example. You can usually use following at the beginning of a sentence, and it equally sounds good at the end of a sentence, although we usually change it to as follows or what follows when we use it at the end of a sentence. Previous or previously, yes, it's common, and I think you know how to use it as a linking word. Before, subsequently, one of these multi-syllable words. Subsequently, be careful of the short e in there. Ently, subsequently, and also the short u. Like umbrella. Subsequently. Above all, it's not so common nowadays. It was probably common, 30 years ago. You will still read it, of course, in old papers and see it on old videos or hear it in old radio programs or audio recordings. But above all is not so common nowadays. You can still use it, of course. And a terrible cliche, please do not use this. Last but not least. Last but not least, Cinderella found her shoe and she lived happily ever after. All sorts of cliches. Happily ever after. Of course, it's a cliche. And it's as bad as last but not least. Please don't use it ever in any form of even slightly professional English context, such as making a presentation in English at any level, or a job interview, or some sort of media production in English. Just don't use it. Last but not least. It's as bad as saying happily ever after. If you really want to parody, and I won't bother explaining the word parody, ask somebody what parody means. It means making fun of something, but you can ask another person for a deeper meaning of the word parody. But it means kind of making a joke of something, making fun of something. If you want to parody some situation, you could say happily ever after, or last but not least. And again, equally as bad, well, maybe nearly as bad, first and foremost. You don't need to say that. First is first, foremost is first, first is foremost. It's like saying hello and hello. You just don't need to say first and foremost. But foremost is pretty good. And I don't know if we had that here as a separate word. We didn't, did we? So we can say foremost. That can be the beginning of your sentence, or first. But to say first and foremost is very much that cliche thing that we want to avoid. Okay, that's it today for IELTS Talk Tips episode 3. Thanks for watching. See you again.